All right, guys, we got Richmond Raceway tonight. This is a 3/4 mile short track, also a flat track. All right, guys, we got Richmond Raceway tonight. It's the last Saturday night race of the season. Richmond is a 3/4 mile flat track. We last raced here back in April, and with qualifying inspection not starting until noon today, I woke up and decided to rewatch April's race, which I can say was a pretty good race, especially for the fact that Rick Allen wasn't on the mic. Some things to remember about Richmond is that there's very few wrecks here. There could be some here and there, but for the most part, this is a relatively tame race. Looking back at this year's first race, we only had Newman and Sorensen that did not finish. 33 cars finished within 3 laps to the leader. Last year's fall race, Landon Castle, Matt Kenseth, and BJ McLeod did not finish, but still 32 cars within 4 laps to the leader. The first race of 2017, Blaney, Allmendinger, and Jones all had issues. Everyone else was within 8 laps of the leader. And then the fall race of 2016, it's really the only outlier over the last few years. We had 9 cars finish 30 or more laps down, but you go back to the first 2016 race, all cars finished within 10 laps to the leader. So what I'm saying here is, as far as what to expect tonight at Richmond, this is a relatively short race. We're only 300 miles, 400 laps. Few cautions. Fuel lasts a long time here, so tires are going to come into play, and people are going to be doing alternate strategies. In the first race this year, we had Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who did an alternate strategy. He ended up with, I think, the most fastest laps. If it wasn't the most, it was up there. We also had BJ McLeod last year that had a bunch of fastest laps. When drivers get in those alternate tire strategies, those guys are going to start putting up fastest laps. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to predict that statistic as far as DraftKings goes. So that being said, you need to focus on laps led. Who's going to lead the most laps? We're going to get right into talking about Kevin Harvick here, who is officially on the pole. Like I said, he hasn't put up many dominator points here lately. But let's talk about the pole sitters. So going back, looking at the last 6 races here, we had Truex on the pole this year. He put up 28 fastest laps, which was 3rd most in the race, and 121 laps led, most in the race. You got Kenseth in both races last year. First race, he put up 54 fastest laps, 164 laps led, ranked 2nd and 1st in those 2 categories. Put up 41 laps led in the fall race, 41 fastest laps in the fall race, 89 laps led, 2nd in both of those. Going back to 2016, we had Hamlin in the fall race, 64 fastest laps, 2nd most, 189 laps led, 2nd most. Harvick in the first race of 2016, 77 fastest laps from the pole, which ranked number 1, 63 laps led, which was 2nd most. And then Joey Logano back in 2015, the fall race, 27 fastest laps, which was 4th most, and 25 laps led, which was 2nd most. So just averaging over those, it would be 6 races. Averaging those 6 races, we're looking at the pole sitter getting about 48.5 fastest laps and 108.5 laps led per race, equaling out to 51.4 dominator points. Take out that Logano statistic from 2015, which was kind of lower than most, and you're at 52.8 fastest laps and 125.2 laps led, equaling 57.7 dominator points. So what does that mean for Harvick tonight? The first sign for what you should think of Harvick is what he said after qualifying, and that was nothing but praise for his race car. He's one of the most pessimistic drivers in the garage, but when he says he likes his car, everyone needs to be a little bit concerned about that. We could see we could see the 4 car absolutely dominate this race. Practice-wise, as I said in my DraftKings article, you got to take those speeds with a grain of salt, but at the same time, Harvick, top 5 in both practices and 10-lap average, and was 5th in happy hour when it came to overall average speed. The last time Harvick was on the pole, he put up 77 fastest laps and 63 laps led. Stewart-Haas overall was great here in April, and it's going to be the case again tonight. The only way Harvick doesn't put up a ton of DraftKings points is if he wrecks or something, which, like I said, isn't very likely. Looking at the rest of the top 5 starting positions, we got Hamlin on the outside pole. If you've read any of my stuff for very long, you know I don't like Hamlin, both as a person and both as fantasy NASCAR goes. He is very good here at Richmond. He's multiple wins. He's led a ton of laps. But at the same time, he hasn't led a significant number of laps since 2016. And in that 2016 race, he did start from the pole when he led just under 200. Other than that, he led about 60 laps here last year in the first race. Finished third, started 16th, so that was a good race. But at the same time, he has not led a significant number of laps here at Richmond in a long time. You got Kevin Harvick starting on the pole, who's probably going to dominate. And then you got Mr. King of negative place differential and Denny Hamlin starting on the outside pole. I do not see this ending well for Denny Hamlin. He might stay up there in the top 5 for most of the race, but he's going to finish probably around 10th, maybe worse. And that's obviously not good for your DraftKings lineup, so I would stay away from the 11 entirely. We got Martin Truex Jr. starting third. He's an interesting play this week. Going into today, I did like Kyle Busch a lot. Qualified just outside the top 10. Got news this morning that he's going to have to start from the rear due to some fixes that the team made after he got into the wall yesterday. We obviously saw in the spring race that he's perfectly capable of getting back to the front and winning here at Richmond. But at the same time, I don't see him putting up as many Dominator points. Truex, on the other hand, you look at the last 3 races here at Richmond, he's third when it comes to fastest laps per race. Only him, Keselowski, and Kenseth are averaging more than 40. Truex's problem here at Richmond is just that he can't finish. So I'm not going to be super heavy on Truex, but at the same time, in certain situations, I think it's worth a play taking that 78 Toyota, even with all the drama that they have going on. Truex, practice-wise, he was 7th in happy hour in 10-lap average, and that's a little significant because he made his long run late in the session. It was from laps 28 through 37, which is really everyone else, made their runs early on, first 10 laps, first 12 laps. So Truex, I think he could lead a handful of laps. It's going to depend on how dominant Kevin Harvick's car is. Truex obviously has the pit crew to get him out front. Going to 4th, we got Ryan Blaney starting 4th. He's awful at Richmond. There's going to be I will have no lineups with Ryan Blaney in them. That's really all I have to say about it. Yes, he's in Penske equipment. Yes, they're doing well. He doesn't do well at this track or this track type. Kurt Busch starting 5th. He had a great car here in April, and I expect the same to be true tonight. Starts a little high, but at the same time, that's going to keep his ownership level down. If he can get to the lead and have as good of a long-run car here tonight as he did back in April, we could easily see Kurt in the winning lineup. Let me pull his numbers real quick. He is a 2-time winner at Richmond. Excuse me. Finished 8th or better in 3 of the last 4 and had some issues late here in the spring, which put him to 11th. But he obviously had a top 5 car for much of the race. Remember, Kurt Busch did have that issue on pit road last April when Daniel Suarez ran over his tire changer's line. Kurt was running top 5, like I said, most of the night. I'm expecting another good run out of that 41 team. Speaking of Daniel Suarez, he did qualify top 5 today. However, they failed inspection this afternoon. I guess it started at noon. He will be starting from the rear. Obviously this is going to make him a chalk play in DraftKings. As far as Richmond goes, Suarez has a 9.7 career average finish here. It's only through 3 races, but the point of the matter is he's never finished worse than 12th. He did start 26th here back in April, finished 10th. A lot of that had to do with some late cautions and a couple breaks, but the finish is a finish. Unless you're in a contest where only first place takes the prize, there's no reason to go against Daniel Suarez tonight simply because of the place differential factor. Cars starting 6th through 10th, we got Aric Almirola rolling off 6th tonight. He's priced pretty moderately in DraftKings at 8,300 and probably had one of the best long-run cars here in April. The late restarts really killed him, though. Ended up going 4 wide, and I think he finished around 17th or something. Very disappointing night. Also didn't lead any laps, so it wasn't a good night for anybody who had him in DraftKings. Me. Anyway, so he does start 6th. That's going to keep his ownership level low tonight. I do like him as a sneaky play, though. He finished 3rd at Loudon this year, which is another short, flat track, led 42 laps. Also finished 7th at Phoenix. And in practice number 1, Almirola was 3rd on the overall average speed chart. If that translates into good long-run speed here during the night, we could see that 10 car finally get up front. Brad Keselowski starts 7th. Excuse me. He's priced pretty high, especially since he's not dominating much, but the fact of the matter is he comes in this race with 3 straight wins. He's a previous winner at Richmond, and he should contend for the win tonight as well. I did write him up in my article. I do really like the play of Keselowski tonight, assuming his ownership level is low. He's finished in the top 4 in terms of fastest laps in 3 of the last 4 Richmond races. 1 here in 2014 and has finished 11th or better in 8 of the last 9 at this track. His pit crew's on fire right now and should get him near or at the front by the end of it. Erik Jones is going to roll off 8th. He's priced $9,300 in DraftKings. I think that's a little too high for him simply because he's not a dominator. We rarely see him put any dominator points up, rarely see fastest laps. He might get to the lead. With that being said, he could be a sneaky play depending, just because there's so many good options here from 9,500 down to the mid 7,500s. So we could see him in some of the higher lineups tonight. He's finished 13th and 6th in the last 2 Richmond races. His car wasn't very good here in April, but he benefited from the late restarts and everything else. I'm not going to be too heavy on him tonight, even though I usually am. I'm a big Erik Jones fan when it comes to fantasy NASCAR, but not tonight. I could see it working out if there's a bunch of wrecks with guys in his price range, but like I said, that doesn't happen very often here at Richmond. Going on to 9th, Kyle Larson is at 10,500. I'm not really sure what fully to expect out of Larson tonight. I always like him in night races. Let me pull up his numbers really quick. He won this race last year, led 53 laps, started 4th, and he's led in 3 of the last 4 races here. No significant numbers. But the fact of the matter is he's finished 7th or better in 3 of those 4 races as well, and he's never finished worse than 16th here at Richmond. So he is, I don't want to call him a dark horse play, but in his price range and starting 9th, I think it's just like Keselowski. I think people are going to overlook him. So I do like Keselowski and Larson there on that same type of play tonight. I don't think there's no way to fit them both into a lineup. So if you're not going to go with a guy like Truex or a guy like Kyle Busch, I do think Larson has the ability, along with Keselowski, to be a great play tonight. It's just going to depend how this race plays out. Cole Custer up here starting in 10th. Great qualifying effort from that team. It's basically another Stewart-Haas car with Custer behind the wheel. He's priced way too high in DraftKings. He's near the 6,000 mark. Comes in at 5,800. I do not like Cole Custer as a fantasy NASCAR play in DraftKings or in any fantasy league that takes place differential into the equation. A good run out of this team is going to be a 20th place finish, which equals 15 base fantasy points when you factor in place differential. Yeah, he's good in good equipment. Yeah, he looked good in practice. Don't forget, practice was during the day. He had the best overall average speed in the first session, also only ran 19 laps. One thing, if you've been paying attention to the Xfinity races, Cole Custer is one of those drivers that seems to out-qualify where he actually runs, and that's going to be the case this weekend. DFS-wise, stay away from Cole Custer. Kyle Busch will start from 11th tonight. He will, however, drop to the rear of the field once the green flag wave, or before the green flag waves, actually. The reason for this is Kyle Busch hit the wall in qualifying yesterday. His team repaired the race car today, deemed unapproved adjustments, so he'll have to go to the rear. However, from DraftKings and any other fantasy NASCAR league, his official starting spot is still 11th. So this is obviously going to make a bunch of people that were on Kyle Busch probably decrease their ownership level of him. They might, switch over to Truex or someone else. So I like this opportunity to go a little overweight on Kyle Busch. Yes, he's starting from the rear, but we saw in April that he started 32nd, still made it to victory lane, still had a great car. This weekend, I think he has a better car than he did in April. Speed-wise, I think he's second to Harvick, and he's obviously great here at Richmond. Just pulling up his numbers real quick. Overall career average finish is 7.2 in 26 races. You don't get that kind of number by luck. So, yes, Kyle Busch is expensive, but I think there's opportunities there to pair him with Harvick in lineups and make up the rest of the points with place differential. Obviously, that's going to require Harvick to get a ton of Dominator points tonight because it's going to take a while for Kyle Busch to get to the front. But like I said earlier, Harvick has a great car. Logano's starting 12th, and I love Joey Logano at Richmond. He has 3 straight top 5s here, hasn't finished worse than 10th since 2013, and he also led 92 laps here back in April, and that was when Penske wasn't running very well. Now they're running a lot better. My only concern is Logano is underpriced this weekend at $8,700, but him starting 12th, I can see people, going for that Bowyer at $9,100. Trying to fit in Suarez, who failed inspection, is going to start from the rear at, I think he's at 7,500. Yeah, 7,500. We'll have to see how the ownership pans out once the roster's locked. But Joey Logano is a great play tonight. There's no reason to shy away from him. Alex Bowman starting 13th. I'm not going to be heavy on him at all. If he might make it into a couple lineups. He finished 18th here in April after starting 11th. Never ran very well. I'm expecting a similar result tonight. One thing to point out, Bowman does run really well at Phoenix, which is essentially a backwards Richmond. But the times that he's run well there is when he started up front, not when he's qualified 13th or qualified outside the top 10. So not a big Bowman fan tonight. I just don't see it working out. Jamie McMurray, though, starting 14th, I really like that play. He's a nice pivot off of Daniel Suarez if you want to take that risk of not going for the guy starting in the rear. McMurray was battling for 13th when him and Newman wrecked in April. He has 5 top 10s in the last 10 Richmond races, though, so he does know how to run well here. And he's a little underpriced. Typically, we see McMurray in those upper 7,000s. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I love the play of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., even though he moved up a spot due to Suarez failing inspection, so he's going to roll off 15th. But he's quite underpriced. $6,400 for Stenhouse is a pretty good value there. And looking back at the race in April, he was one of those guys that did the short pitting. He did it a couple times, which gave him the most fastest laps. But the thing is, short tracks are where Stenhouse really has excelled, both in Xfinity Series and in the Cup Series, alongside with the super speedways. But as far as Richmond goes, he's 19th or better in the last 6 races here. He also had the 9th best 10-lap average in both practice sessions this weekend. I don't think many people are going to be on Stenhouse. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, he's going to finish top 10, but he has a decent chance at maintaining his 15th place starting spot, which is a great value for a guy in his price range. So don't be afraid to take Stenhouse, even though he has the tendency to hit the wall. 20th is where things really start to get interesting DFS-wise. Ryan Newman's going to roll off the grid from 16th. He has 2 top 10 finishes in the last 3 Richmond races, and looking back at April's race, to start the final stage, he was in 10th, but he had a speeding penalty, and then he wrecked when he was battling Jamie McMurray for the lucky dog. I think he ended up maybe 27th or something, pretty far back there. Anyway, I do think Newman is a sneaky play for a top 10 finish tonight, but at the same time, I hate his $8,100 price tag. So while I could like Newman in other formats, DraftKings-wise, not a huge fan of him. Matt Kenseth starting 17th. We saw Richmond is a great track for Matt Kenseth. He sat on the pole in both races here last year. 3 of the last 10 races, he's led well over 100 laps. Obviously, he's not in as good equipment being in that Roush car, but at the same time, we did see him run very well at Indianapolis, which was the most recent flat track, although it was almost 4 times the size. So as far as Matt Kenseth goes, he's he's priced at $7,100 tonight, but I do like him as a play. Again, if you want to jump off of Austin Dillon, who qualified 28th, I do think Matt Kenseth has some play there. Speed-wise, he didn't look great in either practice session, but we all know how these Richmond races can play out. Chase Elliott is an awesome DFS play tonight, I think. He's priced a little high in DraftKings at $9,900, but he is one of, I think, 3 drivers that have finished inside the top 5 in every single race on this track type in 2018. Finished second here at Richmond back in April. A little bit of that was due to the late restarts and everything. But he's starting 18th, and chances are he's going to finish well inside the top 10. So you're going to get those place differential points. If he's able to get to the front, he can lead a little bit, but I don't see that happening. Little high priced, but still a good play. I don't see many people taking Elliott tonight, so that could get you, in that price range of the off-sequence pick. His teammate William Byron starts right behind him in 19th. Love William Byron tonight. He was one of the most impressive drivers here back in April. He finished 4th in Stage 1, 5th in Stage 2. He had a speeding penalty to start the final stage, and everything kind of went to shit after that. I'll have to check where he finished. Just a second. He ended up in 12th, which is about where he's run in every similar track this year. However, the reason he didn't finish well inside the top 10 was because he missed a shift on the restart with 22 to go when he was running top 5. William Byron's priced at $6,800 this week. I do like Byron tonight. I'd highly recommend him, especially if you want to get off that Austin Dillon chalk play. Paul Menard starting 20th. Not a big fan of Paul Menard. He's priced in the mid-7,000s. Doesn't run well here. A top 15 would be a good night out of that race team. Don't see it happening. Jimmie Johnson's going to start 21st tonight. There's so much chalk that I don't hate playing Johnson tonight, even though he's very unreliable in fantasy NASCAR. He's priced at $7,900, which I think is the lowest price for Jimmie this year. But he's really good at Richmond. 8 straight finishes of 11th or better here, including a 6th place finish here in April, which you kind of have to take that and analyze it a little bit more because the 48 car wasn't very good in that race. Got into the wall early. It was lapped before Stage 1 even ended. However, team rebounded, benefited from those late cautions and waiver rounds, and ended up finishing 6th. In this price range, I think Johnson has the potential to go under-owned, so I do love him, and I don't love him, but I do like him in DraftKings tonight. Chris Buescher is rolling off 22nd. Price too high and starts too high. Not a good combination in DFS. I won't be targeting Buescher at all tonight. Michael Mcdowell at 5,500 starting 23rd. With so many drivers failing inspection, there's no reason to roll the dice. He finished 16th here last year, I believe, in the 95 car. Obviously has that potential again tonight, but more than likely he's going to finish worse than he starts. Clint Bowyer's now going to start 24th after the failed inspections. He had the best car here in April pretty much for most of the race, even though he started 16th. Top 10 in average speed in both practices. The only issue I have with Clint Bowyer is his momentum. 8 of the last 10 races, he's finished outside the top 10. However, great race at Indianapolis for this 14 team. They almost won. They had probably the best car. I think they led the most laps that day. And Boyer's good here at Richmond. He's a little pricey, but he's going to get a ton of points, and he has the chance to get up and lead some laps as well. Bubba Wallace is going to start 25th. Not a big Bubba fan, especially when he starts, mid-20s, because that's probably about where he's going to finish. Also, you never know when this team's going to have another brake failure. Not a big fan at Bubba Wallace, even at that $6,200 price tag. Austin Dillon was the chalk play coming into Saturday night race at 6,900. Now all of a sudden we have Suarez and Ragan and Smith starting in the back. Austin Dillon could get a little less owned than he should be. The thing about Dillon here at Richmond is that he's consistent, but he's not great. He's finished 21st or better in each of the last 5. Finished 15th here last April, and that's a little noteworthy because the 3 team did have an experimental setup in that car. They were preparing for this race. Obviously didn't work very well for qualifying, but they were 7th and 12th in 10-lap averages on Friday. I think Austin Dillon has a chance to crack the top 20. Things go his way, he could get up into the top 15. He's a pretty good play there at 6,900. The rest of the field, we have Matt Dibenedetto starting 27th. He's priced pretty well at 5,200, and he finished 16th here back in April, just, staying out of trouble. I do like Dibenedetto as a low-dollar option this week, even though he's not one of the guys starting in the back. 27th is a little bit high, but at the same time, with David Ragan going to the back and Regan Smith as well, I think Dibenedetto has some upside there to be an off-sequence pick. AJ Allmendinger's now starting 28th. The thing about Allmendinger this weekend is he loved his car in first practice, which is when temps at the track were coolest, probably most like what we're going to see here on Saturday night. But he sucks here. Best finish of 20th in the last 6 Richmond races. Not trustworthy at all. More likely to hit the wall than anything else. If you're going to use Allmendinger, use him sparingly, especially with that mid $6,000 price tag. Ty Dillon, like the Ty Dillon play this week. He's a good, solid finisher, stays out of trouble. He's finished between 20th and 26th in all 3 starts here at Richmond. He'll officially be scored from 29th. Priced at $6,000, so it's a little high, but it can get you off those chalk picks of Ragan and Regan Smith, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. As far as punt plays overall, though, now that we're back into this 30th and worst starting spot, Ross Chastain has done well this whole season. Typically, though, his cap's right about 28th place finishing position, so I'm not a huge fan of using him or really any punt play. Remember, Richmond does not have very many cautions, does not have very many wrecks, which means there's not going to be much attrition. These guys aren't going to post 20th place finishes because 10 guys wrecked out of the race. So you're not going to get that kind of relief out of Corey LaJoie or someone like that, starting outside the top 30. Chances are that's where they're going to finish. Focusing now on the 3 guys that failed inspection, we got Daniel Suarez, who's going to start 38th. He's a good option here at Richmond, no matter where he starts. But now that he's got the place differential potential, he's a must play in DraftKings. Regan Smith, he's priced a little high this week at 5,700, probably due to his performance here in the last couple of weeks. He finished 12th at Vegas last week and 20th at Indianapolis. However, I'm not a huge fan. I'm a bigger fan of fading Regan Smith this week than I am just blindly going with him just because he starts 39th. The 95 car here back in April was absolute garbage, and I'll have to pull Smith's numbers, but he's never really run very well at this track no matter what kind of equipment he was in. Even when he was with Furniture Racing, like in 2011, he started second, finished 17th, led 0 laps, garbage. Second race, started 23rd, finished 18th. Those are his best finishes here. So chances are I'm not going to have much Regan Smith. I'm going to take my chances elsewhere. I'm going to go with like a Ty Dillon, someone more that I can trust, and just hope Regan Smith has some issues and I can get an advantage there with there being quite a few chalk plays this week. David Ragan, I liked him before the qualifying inspection process. I like him even more now that he's starting 40th, and he cannot get any negative fantasy points this week. He finished 33rd here back in April, but he was running 16th and on the lead lap with 12 to go before he spun and hit the wall. So it's not like he's awful at this track, and he finished 19th here last season as well. So when you combine that with the fact that he's starting dead last, he has easily top 25 potential, I'd say, maybe top 20. Great play in all formats. No reason to go against David Ragan. That's all I have to say about Richmond. Good luck to everybody in the DFS world tonight. Hopefully we get a full race in. I know there's some rain that's forecasted, but never really know what's going to happen. We've lucked out quite a few times this season when it comes to that. And, hey, don't forget Martin Truex Jr. is in that Auto Owners blue paint scheme. Domination. See you guys.